Maureen Valentine, and I am in animal science. I'm a fourth-year PhD and a TCI scholar. And today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my PhD project. So for the year of 2016, I was living in Odisha, India, which is on the eastern coast, a little south of Calcutta. And I was doing a goat feeding experiment in the tribal area of Odisha. So the district is Kandhamal, and it's the tribal populations, and they live in the forest fringe areas. So that's where I was setting up my project. And today I'm going to talk to you about the potential changes to indigenous goat feeding systems and in the tribal farms in Odisha. So a little bit about why we care about this and why I went there in the first place. So India has a massive livestock population. It's one of the largest livestock populations in the world, and it has a massive feed scarcity. So there just isn't enough to feed all the livestock that are there. So there's about a 50% deficit for fresh green fodder and about a 25% deficit for dry fodder. So it's pretty severe. And a lot of farmers in India are heavily dependent on common property resources, so public lands, that are decreasing in availability, and with the size decreasing, the quality of those lands is also decreasing in terms of grazing quality for the animals. So in the state of Odisha, the government has reported that there's a major ecological concern with the deterioration of its common property resources. So the objective of this study was to experiment with intensifying the goat production system as a way to take pressure off of the land and salvaging some of the common property resources while increasing the potential for livelihoods through livestock with farmers. So my research questions were, what is the feed intake and diet digestibility of openly grazed goats in tropical India? And by openly grazed, I mean basically not managed. So there's very few inputs in these systems. And what are the physiological, health, and nutritional differences between an openly grazed goat and a semi-intensive system in these tribal farms? And what would be the barriers to adoption of changes in their livestock systems? So I was there for a year, like I said, and I collected a lot of different variables, but this is a little bit of what I did. So I was in 2 main villages and 16 households that were divided into 2 groups, and all of the goats in those households were either feeding under a semi-intensive stall feeding system, or they were openly grazing. And then within each household, I selected 4 females that were reproductively active, and those were kind of my intensively monitored goats. So with those goats in all 3 seasons, so in summer, rainy, and winter, in that order, I observed those goats for 1 day each in all 3 seasons, and I followed them and accounted for what they did at 15-minute intervals. And so I have about 3,000 data points of what goats ate over those 3 seasons. And then the most commonly consumed forages, I took samples of those to get the nutritional quality within each season. And then we also took household surveys of all the participating households. We did focus groups throughout the year in my villages and also in the nearby villages. And then I also weighed the goats on a monthly basis, weighed any new kids that were born, and overall just kind of observed what was happening in the livestock system, who died, who was born, who was sold, how much did they get, all that kind of stuff. So my main findings, so something that was really interesting is that the participants estimate that the pasture land has decreased by about 50% in the last 10 to 15 years, while the livestock population is increasing. So this kind of reinforced my reason for doing the project in the first place. Goat is a really valuable commodity right now, and they see the value in that, so they want to increase their populations, while their pasture lands are decreasing in size, and the quality is not very good. My goat kids in the treatment group were about 3.35 times more likely to survive than kids in the control group, which is a nice finding. So this graph, which is a little light, but the goats on the bottom are the control kids, and the goats on the top are the treatment kids. And main reason I think this happened is the goat mothers just didn't have a lot of milk to feed their kids. A lot of the kids died from starvation. So the mothers in the treatment group had a little bit better nutrition to provide milk for their kids, and then they were more likely to survive. And then the farmers were definitely interested in cultivating and providing alternative sources of feed, particularly in the rainy season, because goats don't like water and they don't go outside during the rain. So sometimes it'd be 3-4 days that the goats just wouldn't eat anything. And in that time, they definitely saw the advantage of this other household that actually had some feed available that they could feed their animals. So some policy implications. So looking at the forage quality and what the goats were consuming on the common property resources, we can definitely recommend various types of forest management and land management that could be possible in these types of places. Focus on alternative livestock feed awareness for farmers could definitely have a large impact. Where I was, the extension systems were definitely lacking And I think the government would need to invest quite a bit more in providing services to farmers. The farmers were very eager for help and knowledge, but the systems were not there to assist them. And policymakers should continue to push for a more intensive production system. Or the other option is to better manage the land, which would need to come from more of a top-down type situation because the land is public. So the government would either need to step in and monitor and rotationally graze the land, or it would be easier at the individual farmer level if they could move towards a more stall feeding type system. So that is the basic overview of my project and what I did, so thank you for listening. And this is just a little video of my goats leaving for the day to go out for grazing. Thank you.